I, 26 male, met my fiance, 26 female, at a convention I was at for work 3 years ago, and we hit it off instantly. We ended up hooking up that first night, but we exchanged numbers and we stayed in touch. Not long after we had to leave each other, we sort of developed this long-distance relationship. Over time, that developed into a monogamous relationship, and after a while I decided to move over to her city. She had a sick grandparent at the time that she was helping take care of, so it only seemed right that I'd be the one to move. After we lived together for about 6 months, I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I bought a ring and I proposed. Not even a week after I proposed, she started planning the wedding with her best friend and her sister. Everything between us was perfect. I didn't think I would have had any reason to worry about her behavior. We were dedicated to each other, and I fully trusted her. Being away from all of my friends and family was difficult. I had a pretty tight-knit group of people back home, so I really tried to immerse myself in my work to avoid the lonely feelings I was having without them there. Months pass and we're getting closer to the wedding date. My fiancé had everything planned, and everything was going very smoothly leading up to the bachelor and bachelorette parties. I was able to find a weekend where all of my good friends and my brother were able to come over and visit for the bachelor party. We rented an errand at a cabin on the lake. We spent the whole weekend drinking beer and fishing. Honestly, I had no desire to go to any clubs or hire any dancers or anything like that. I just wanted to have a weekend with my friends. My fiancée, on the other hand, wanted to have the party of her life. She's been telling me all about what her dream bachelor party was, and it involved going to Vegas, gambling a little bit, going to shows, male strip clubs, and the works. Again, I trusted her, so I didn't think anything was going to happen. We both went our separate ways for the weekend, and we didn't talk to each other at all. Our friends made sure we had no contact with each other because they insisted that was the point of this party. When the weekend was over, she and I both got back home, and we filled each other in on what happened at the parties. I told her that nothing too exciting really happened. It was more so a relaxing weekend than anything. She kept insisting that I was hiding something in a joking manner at first, but it quickly took a turn, and it seemed somewhat accusatory. She thought it was abnormal for a man to have a bachelor party without any dancers being present, so she thought I was lying to her. She told me she had a fun time with the girls, they were drunk almost all of the weekend, and she said it was a nice farewell to her single life. A few days had passed, and I was at home working when I heard her laptop dinging. She had been over at her grandmother's house, helping her with some cleaning and things like that. I assumed that she must have just left it open by mistake. I never been too nosy before or anything like that, but there were a lot of modifications going on. I started to get kind of worried. I thought that maybe it might have been her sending a message to get my attention in case something happened and she couldn't reach me. So I once just went to take a brief look at what was happening. Turns out it was her bachelorette party group chat sending all of the pictures and videos from the weekend. I laughed to myself thinking I was just being paranoid. However, I did look at the pictures. My alarm bells quickly started to go off when I saw an ex-boyfriend of hers in the pictures. She and I had been open about all of our past relationships, so I knew who he was as soon as I saw him. In fact, he was somebody that she had been with for many years, even longer than she and I were together. Sometimes I wondered if she was still in love with him, but she convinced me that she wasn't. She said he had a new girlfriend and they were just friends. He was even invited to the wedding. In several pictures, they were very close to each other. He had his hand on her lower back, and they were dancing together. It seemed pretty intimate, definitely too close for comfort for me. As I kept scrolling, I found a video that another girl had taken, and in the background, I could see my fiancé climbing onto the couch where her ex was sitting and straddling him. Other girls were screaming at them and cheering them on as she kissed him. It got hot and heavy real quick. The video ended with them walking off hand in hand to go God only knows where. I felt sick to my stomach. Never in my life had I felt as heartbroken as I did in that moment. I had always been insecure about her ex. And there, they were kissing and going off to what I assumed was a bedroom together. Right away, I looked through their messages and I found more evidence that confirmed they did in fact sleep together. On top of that, I learned that they had unprotected sex. I learned that because in one of the messages following their night together, he told her that he found out he had a venereal disease and that she should get tested. I was extremely thankful that she and I had made an agreement not to sleep together until the night of the wedding. The last time we had been together was a week before the parties. So if she contracted anything from him, I didn't get it. I was angry, I was hurt, and I wanted to get back at her. The wedding was off, but she didn't know that. I screenshotted the messages and saved the videos so I could send them to myself to have as evidence. The rehearsal dinner for our wedding was just around the corner and she and I had planned on giving little speeches in front of everyone. Another part of that was giving them little gift bags to thank them for their involvement. I printed out of the text messages with pictures of my fiancée and her ex kissing at the bachelorette party. When the day of the rehearsal dinner came around, I slipped them into the goodie bags. My fiancée gave her speech telling everybody about how much she loves me, and how much she couldn't live without me. When it came to my turn to give the speech, I started off by saying that I put a surprise for everybody in the gift bags and I asked them to take a look. Honestly, I hadn't known that he was going to be there with his girlfriend, but it was a pleasant surprise to see it. The smile on my fiancée's face quickly faded away when she looked at what everyone was pulling out of the bags. On top of that, her ex's new girlfriend poured water all over him and ended things right there. She even yelled at him about how irresponsible he was and how he could have given something to her. Honestly, it made me wonder if that wasn't the first time he cheated on her. After she stormed out of the restaurant, I started my speech. I started off by saying how glad I was to have found out about my fiancé's true nature before we were married. Then I called everything off, telling everybody to return all the gifts they bought or keep them for themselves. I walked away and my now ex chasing me to try to explain what happened. She tried to lie to me and tell me they didn't sleep together. But in the messages, he clearly said that he might have passed her an STD, so I didn't understand how she thought she was getting away with that lie. I ended up going back to our apartment and packing up the small number of things that I moved there with. I booked a flight back home, and I stayed with my brother for a few weeks until I found my home place. Now she's out of my life for good, and I don't want anything to do with her ever again. Oh, my condolences for what happened. However, it is for the best that you found this out before the wedding. If she was so easily convinced to cheat on you during one night, then the future didn't look very bright. I agree. It definitely sounds like her ex had been cheating on his new girlfriend with other women aside from your ex-fiancé. Her reckless and impromptu decision definitely backfired on her by catching something from her ex. That just seems like karma, though. It's good that you're back home with people that you know, and you don't feel so isolated anymore. I hope that you're able to move on from her and find another person that will value you. I wish you nothing but the best. Now, let's move on to our next story. This story happened roughly in 2007 or 2008. So bear with me while I recall some of the details. My 43 male, wife, 42 female, and I both got married a couple of years after high school. We knew each other while we were in school, but we didn't start dating until after we both graduated. We ended up working at the same small-town grocery store and really clicking. We were polar opposites, but it seemed like we could learn a lot from each other, so everything worked out. I didn't grow up in a family with money or anything like that, so one of the options I had to move forward in my life was to join the army. It would have offered me stable pay. College would have been more attainable, and I felt a sense of pride in fighting for my country. I had a long discussion with my wife about what to do, so we both ended up deciding that joining the army was going to be a good option. I signed up at a local recruitment office and underwent all of the physical exams, training, etc. Eventually, I was accepted, and not long after I was deployed to Iraq. Now I don't want to get into a lot of the stuff that happened while I was there, but it was extremely difficult. I didn't have a lot of time to relax or even call home and talk to my wife. I missed her more than anything, but I had a few grainy pictures on the extremely out-of-date cell phone of the time. After some time, I was able to go back home and be with her. It was a homecoming like something you would see in a movie. She was waiting for me, and she ran right into my arms, and she cried into my chest while I held her. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. Unfortunately, that happiness was short-lived. We lived in a very small town. Whenever I would go to the gas station, a restaurant, the grocery store, you name it, people would come up to me and pat me on the back and thank me for my service. I really felt like a hero in town. One night, I was meeting up at the local dive bar with a couple of friends from high school who were back in town. We were catching up and enjoying our conversation, shooting some pool, and not paying much attention to the people around us. Now most of the time I was out, I'd be with my wife. It almost felt like the time apart made her want to be with me all the time. I didn't mind it, but I was happy to be able to spend some time just with my boys. While we were in the middle of a game of pool, someone from the bar came and tapped me on the shoulder. I was expecting the usual "I just wanted to thank you" that I commonly received, but I was wrong. He was an older gentleman I recognized from around town, though I didn't know much about him. He pulled me outside and told me he had something to tell me. I was curious, so I followed him, outwardly confessed to knowing about an affair my wife had while I was deployed. I was shocked and didn't necessarily believe him right away. I thought he was kind of crazy. My wife loved me. There was no way she'd cheat on me. But he gave a lot of specific details that made me see a glimmer of truth in his words. He told me that there was another man often at my house and hanging around my wife at the bar. On one occasion, he saw them kissing in her car, which led to them getting very antsy. And he implied that she performed oral sex on him. As much as I didn't want to believe it, I couldn't ignore it. He described the man, but he didn't know his name. I ended up leaving the bar early and going home. My wife was asleep when I got there, so I started digging around. Facebook had become very popular over the years, and my wife was obsessed with it. So much that it actually caused some issues with us. I didn't have an account, so I didn't know how it worked. I turned on our computer, and I was relieved when I went to the website and saw that she was logged into her page. I started to question what I was doing there. It felt like a huge invasion of privacy to be snooping through her stuff. But I convinced myself that it was harmless if she was doing nothing wrong. It took me a few minutes to get the hang of how the website worked. Then when I got it down, I was able to look through some of her posts and see who was liking them. Most of them were her relatives and friends, some strangers that I could see she knew solely through Facebook and not in person. However, she posted a picture of herself, and in the comments, there were a lot of men I didn't know telling her she was beautiful. One of them happened to be an account with a profile picture that looked a lot like the man in the bar described. I found the chat part of the website and looked through some of her messages. There had been dozens of men messaging her, telling her that they wanted to be with her, sending explicit messages about what they wanted to do with her, and sending pictures. She was entertaining all of them. She was sexting with these strange men, sending them pictures of herself back, and telling them exactly what they wanted to hear. The man in question that I was looking for originally was one of those men, but I could see that their messages were different than all of the others. He was sending her pictures of himself, and she was commenting about how good-looking he was. Apparently, he only lived a town over, so they made plans to get together to hook up. She had given him our address and they set several dates to be together. Every time they would part ways the following day, they would send messages talking about how much fun they had together and how they couldn't wait to be with each other again. On top of that, he was telling her about how much better she was than his wife. The messages he was sending her were appalling. I thought I knew my wife, but I was mistaken. Not only was she betraying my trust, but she was knowingly sleeping with another married man. I felt like I was falling through the air when I read those messages. My entire life had just been ripped out from under my feet. I pulled out my phone and I actually took pictures and videos of some of the messages because I didn't know of any other way to do it. Because we were in such a small town, everybody always knew everybody else's business. Just from the amount of time I was scanning my wife's Facebook page, I saw that she was posting things about being a military wife. There were dozens of people commenting that she was so strong for what she did and how they sympathized with her. I was going to ruin all of that. I was going to tell them all the truth and she would lose everything. I made my own Facebook page posting a picture of myself so everybody would know that it was me. I must have sent out 200 friend requests in the span of a few hours. I friended the man she was sleeping with and his wife. Both of them accepted my request. I waited a little while so I could make sure I had as many friends as possible before posting my evidence. After a couple of days, I felt good enough to do it. I made a big long post about how when I was away, the only thing I wanted was my wife, but while I was away, she was involved with countless men. I posted screenshots of some of the messages and talked about how betrayed I felt. I made sure to include her face, and then of the man that I knew she slept with. The post got 100,100 of likes. It was being shared with people that I didn't even know. Soon enough, people were commenting on her posts and telling her that she should be ashamed of herself and that she was disgusting for what she did. The man that she was sleeping with messaged me and told me that I was a coward for handling things the way that I did, I just ignored him. I messaged his wife to make sure she was okay. I didn't know her, but we had gone through the same thing, and I wanted her to know that she could reach out to me if she needed to. Told me that she kicked him out of the house, and she was going to be filing for divorce. I was doing the exact same thing. I ended up divorcing my wife. We were only renting at the time, so I moved out and into a house with one of my buddies from high school. I'm not going to lie. It took a while for me to recover from the betrayal that I felt. But after a few years, I met a lovely woman who I had a lot in common with, and we fell in love with each other. She was very patient with me, and understood why I was nervous about her potentially cheating, but she did everything in her power to reassure me of our relationship. Now we have been married for 10 years and we have 3 wonderful children together. Oh, P. First of all, I want to thank you for everything you did to defend our country. I'm so sorry you had to come home and find out your wife betrayed you in such a way. It's such a shame that she would throw away your marriage for a meaningless fling with a stranger she met on Facebook. On top of that, sending dirty messages and pictures to other men. You did the right thing by airing them both out. Who knows? It might have gone on much longer if the man at the bar hadn't told you about it. It's great that he had the courage to tell you. Others in town might have even known, but been too afraid to speak up. I'm glad you got away from her, but I'm even more glad to hear that you're happy now with a new family. I hope everything continues to go your way, and you can enjoy your life without her. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.